This is the iPhone 17 Pro Max. This is the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. I have taken and analyzed over 500 photos and videos on each to find out which of these cameras would I want to use. So let's start with the front camera. Okay, so this is front camera footage taken on both phones, and actually right off the bat, massive difference. So you can see this new front camera on the iPhone is quite a bit wider. So you're not just seeing my face and shoulders like you are on the Samsung, but also a little bit more of the scene on either side. But most of all, look at this. It's just completely blown out on the Samsung, but you can see so much more of the sky details on the iPhone. What about stabilization? So this is meant to be one of the key things that's improved with the iPhone camera this time. And to be honest, when you're just walking around, you can't really tell the difference. They're both pretty fantastic. If I start running, so I'd say the iPhone creeps in front, but there's still not a massive amount in it. They're both very serviceable at doing this. And I'm out of breath. So yeah, the iPhone 17 Pro's front camera experience is probably the best I've ever used on a phone. And it's partly wideness and stabilization. It's partly how well it works on third-party social media apps, but also this new ability to rotate the camera to landscape without even needing to flip the phone. Which means when I want to take landscape video on my iPhone, I can do so while still holding the phone upright so that my eyes are looking at the middle of the screen. But if I wanted to take that same video on the Samsung, then my eyes are looking at the screen, but the camera is all the way over here. So you notice the lack of eye contact. And when it comes to photos, Apple's image processing seems to have finally stabilized. You know, older iPhones used to make your skin look really rough, not anymore. They used to have this weirdly warm tinge, not anymore. The skin tone and color of these iPhone 17 shots is, well, I mean, it's a little boring compared to Samsung's vibrancy, but it is more technically correct. So Apple can take the overall win in front cameras. But what about zoom? Because while Apple has upgraded their zoom this time round to this 4x optical zoom camera that has a 48 megapixel resolution, when I saw that, all I could think was, yeah, but Samsung's should still be better with its 5x optical zoom camera that is 50 megapixel. So we found a massive pack of deer really far away from us. Let's zoom all the way in. And yeah, to be honest, I think Samsung's photo is a mile better here. This is a 40x zoom, and while there isn't actually a massive difference in terms of the information being captured, it's Samsung's processing. It's the decision to crank up the contrast and add extra sharpening that in this case is a total game changer, but it isn't always. Let's try something. Okay, I'm gonna flash two photos on screen quickly. Now, you've got a second. Which of these is better? Okay, so there's a decent chance that you, like me, initially sided with this one because, I mean, contrast and sharpness are like the first things your brain registers. This is Samsung's shot, but now look a little closer. And can you start to realize how that contrast has also come at the cost of the natural color and texture of the animals? Here's another example. I think Samsung is more immediately eye-grabbing on first glance, but then you start to properly soak it in, and I'm pretty 50-50 between the two. You could literally edit either one of these and turn them into the other, and just for fun, we did that. And the same is true for zoom video. So if you were at a concert or spying on a family of ducks, then I can't even see a slight difference in information being captured here at 10x zoom. It's just more sharpness and more contrast on Samsung, which sometimes makes it better, sometimes makes it worse. I do think it's a pro that the iPhone zoom slider is smoother and it's more responsive, but then again, Samsung's screen is brighter in broad daylight, and that is just as useful. So honestly, give me either of these for zoom and I will be very happy. But now that we've touched on video, I do just want to talk about video in general. Because a few generations ago, this was a very easy thing to draw conclusions on. The iPhone just used to capture this whole extra layer of detail, but that's not really the case anymore. Like, this is a 4K clip taken on the ultra-wide cameras. And even though we are very far out, you can still fairly clearly see what this chimp is up to on both. Now, if we want to see clearer, we can switch over to the main 1x camera. But again, there isn't a detail difference at all. The only thing that I can notice, and you will see this throughout the comparison in all areas, is Samsung just isn't as consistent when it comes to color. Because have a look at the greenery in this shot, the trees and the grass, and see how much it changes as we move between the main camera and the ultra-wide. Or here, if we take some slow-mo, it's very detailed on both phones. It's just, look at all the animals on this merry-go-round. Can you see how Samsung's shot is quite overexposed, whereas the iPhone 17 Pro has handled it? And yeah, don't look at me. The high-level summary, though, is unless you have niche uses, like wanting to do extreme color grading stuff, like these are both really nice shots of some really nice parkour. These phones are so good now that we actually use both iPhones and Samsungs for different types of shots in our own videos. We use iPhones for most of the sections that are focused on me, just because of the reliability of the skin tones. But then we use Samsung for recording most of the time lapses of products, because This phone shoots in 8K resolution, which gives you a lot more room after you've shot to be able to zoom in on the specific bits that you want to talk about. It's actually kind of sad that in 2025, the maxed out Pro iPhones still can't shoot 8K. Now, one of the other things that Apple said is that the iPhone 17 Pros should have next generation portrait mode. And to be honest, I feel like I've heard this sentence like 6 times at this point, so I was expecting this to be a bit of a nothing upgrade. But I can actually tell the difference. So both phones take 12 megapixel portrait shots at 2 times magnification, but the iPhone's 12 megapixel shots are substantially more detailed. I mean, just have a look here how every bit of the texture on my shirt has been preserved here. It's also the more color consistent camera. Like, can you see how Samsung's added a pretty strong blue hue to my shirt, which did not exist in reality? And I want to stress, Samsung being more colorful does not always make its photos worse. Like, even though the accuracy of the iPhone is useful, it can also be kind of bland. Like, if you ask me which of these 2 photos I would rather post somewhere, it would be the Samsung. But if I were to recommend one of these phones for taking portraits, it would have to be the one that has better fundamentals, and that is the iPhone. The detail difference is substantial, and it also feels like Apple has caught up with the one thing that Samsung really had them on: edge detection. This is something that you can tell Apple has worked on this generation specifically, because Samsung used to be noticeably ahead, but now it's starting to feel like the iPhone is just as hard to catch out. And that's both for humans, but also animals, like shockingly well. Animals that I can't imagine Apple and Samsung have sat there training their camera models on, but it's just impressive. It's pretty close to a DSLR quality background blur effect. Normal photos are kind of the same story too. The vast majority of the time you will look at what both phones take and you will think those are both sick shots. And so for a casual user, it doesn't really matter. Just pick the one whose style you prefer more. So that's the iPhone's more neutral look or Samsung's brighter, more vibrant one. But if we are getting out the magnifying glasses and analyzing, then just like with portraits, when you're taking 1x normal photos on your main camera, then yeah, the iPhone does pretty consistently get more detail in your shots than Samsung does. I mean, it's essentially just the fact that by default on auto, Apple is shooting in 24 megapixel compared to Samsung's 12. So if we crop into this thing's butt, then you can see more of the wood grain on Apple. And it does that while shooting faster too. Not by a mile like it used to, it's pretty close now, but look at this shot. This flamingo here was just about to take off. And can you see how the iPhone has practically frozen each drop of water on the spot? Whereas on Samsung, there's a very slight drift from the fact that it's taking just a little bit of extra time to capture. And then, as with every single other mode, skin tones are also more predictable. There's no weird blue tinges like you can see on the Samsung here. I've always enjoyed having dinner and interacting, and so the other day I actually took these out with me to try some macro photos. And Apple is able to focus closer, which is, I suppose, technically the job of a macro camera, but Samsung makes the food look so damn appetizing. I prefer Samsung's processing for these shots. Okay, there's an incredibly loud train over there. So let's turn the cameras around and let's see which of these phones is actually better able to remove that noise. So this is the iPhone. Now moving over to the Samsung. So listen to the background noise. How clearly can you hear my voice and how much does that sound disappear? So yeah, I do find that Samsung is usually better at getting rid of the background noises, but just also that something is usually lost in the quality of your voice while it is doing so. And yes, the iPhone technically has one extra microphone, and yes, it has the whole audio mix feature set, but Samsung's actually been adding tons of stuff like this too, and I would say ultimately with audio, it is a bit of a toss-up. But just generally with this generation, it does feel like Apple has really focused on ironing out their camera's weaknesses. Their zoom needed work. They've upgraded the zoom camera. The portrait mode had started falling behind. They've amped it up. I used to prefer Samsung selfies, but Apple's overhauled that experience entirely. But can Samsung turn the tables when things get dark? No, not really. But there are a couple of exceptions. So when you're taking videos at night, I would say both phones struggle an equal amount at correctly exposing the bright spots. Like, can you see how the name of this crepe cafe is practically unreadable on both? Bit of a crepe image, to be honest. And when you look close at the brickwork, they're also similar. Samsung is a bit grainier, Apple is a bit smoothed out, but I wouldn't say either is better. The detail level is pretty much the same. Like if we zoom into this sign over here, it's the same legibility, which I would say is a better indicator of information captured as opposed to sharpness or smoothness. But these are the key differences that I have noticed at night. One, Samsung's photos have better dynamic range than Apple's. Like this sign over here was super bright compared to the rest of the scene. Samsung could handle it, the iPhone couldn't. Two, iPhone's portrait mode holds its quality, whereas Samsung's falls apart quite a bit more, with it losing a grip on the way that colors should be presented and getting a bit too noisy. And three, that the iPhone is actually better at zooming in too when it's dark. Bear in mind, with each of these things I'm saying, while I'm showing you one example, I have double, triple tested each finding, and consistently, Apple is better at producing natural detail, whereas the S25 Ultra starts to scramble in these low light situations. It forces itself to have detail, even if it has to invent it to get there. So to bring this all together, if we just for a second put aside everything else about the rest of these phones, which of these two cameras would I choose and recommend more? I would say the iPhone. In my previous test, the iPhone 16 Pro Max just edged out the S25 Ultra, but now with the 17, I would say the gap has become significant. Now that doesn't mean that Android doesn't have great options. You know, Vivo is killing it, Oppo, these companies are both in this upper echelon. Xiaomi too, in some ways, but I think Samsung has to work on both color consistency and also detail in photos if they want to keep up with them. Oh, also, if you're wondering what I use to take that shot, it's literally my phone case. Because TORRAS cases have these rotating stands baked into them, you don't need tripods or fancy equipment. You are just always ready to take the shot you want. They're also magnetic, so sometimes I'll just whack my phone onto a pole to hold it in place. And because this isn't just a stand, it's also a hook, you can wedge it into all sorts of pockets. And it's not even just about recording stuff. Like, I use these cases to FaceTime my mum while I'm eating. All finished off by the fact that this one in particular, the Q3 Veg Skin, is the strangest named, but almost definitely most beautiful case I have ever put my phone in. I've literally ordered a second one already for Drisha. Link below to join the club.